All right, welcome back to the Crave Show with me, Chris Fikes. We got JRuss, and tonight we have two very special guests with us. We've got Joey. Shoot, Joey, I don't know your last name.
Joey Baker.
Joey Baker. I did know your last name. We've got Joey Baker and Laura.
It's a weird one.
Galdamez.
Yeah.
Galdamez?
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you guys both for joining us tonight, man. It's awesome to have y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. How are y'all doing? Joey, what's been going on, man? I got to see you at Summerfest. We were chatting a little bit. What have you been up to, man?
Since Summerfest, it's pretty much been all go for training for nationals. We've been jumping all week. People keep asking, you guys training this week? And like, no, training's pretty much done. We're just kind of warming up for Saturday. Hopefully we start on Saturday. So,
Okay, so what do you mean train? Like, why do you say training is done? What's the difference between training and what you would do like this past week?
So like, everything is, throughout the year has been specific focuses, working on different transitions, trying new things. Like you said, you're looking at some of our Instagram stuff and some of the stuff we've been doing on there. So working on all that new stuff, trying the new things, that's all done now.
Okay.
There's no more new things on the table. It's what are we going to do at nationals?
Gotcha. Okay. That makes
some
sense.
random draws and just, staying current, staying warm, hopefully building consistency and confidence going into Saturday.
Cool. And just for everybody listening, if you don't know, Joey is teammates with Lindsay Finner, who we had on the show, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, JRuss, is that about right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so they compete in MFS, right?
Yep.
And so we've got nationals coming up. Is it this next week, right?
It has started. So
it's already started.
Has been competing on the tummy stuff for the last week or so.
Oh, nice. Okay, Laura. So yeah, Laura, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've got going on.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, yeah, my nationals literally just finished up today. So,
wow.
So I started skydiving back in 2020 and I've been competing since the 2022. So, but yeah, I try to get into as much of it as I can. So we started off with 4-way, 8-way, 16-way, and then 10-way just finished up today. So everybody's out there. It's tummy time is done. We're definitely done.
Well, so how did you guys do? Do you have the results already? What can you share with us?
Yeah. No, it was great. It was a fantastic season. Our 4-way team unfortunately lost our tail flyer a week ago. He ended up unfortunately having a rough landing and he broke his ankle. So, but we were fortunate enough to have a JRuss, who's a fantastic belly flyer, jump in with us. So, become kind of a pickup team in a sense. But our 8-way team did fantastic. We were with Craig Gerard and Chris Coleman's group, Mandatory Fun, and we ended up being able to place in 4th place in the open class for that. So we'll be able to actually go to Worlds next year, which will be fantastic. And our 16-way team took silver, which was awesome. So, and our 10-way team had a lot of fun. Ended up being able to place 3rd in that, but it was a great time. Great time.
Cool. So you said y'all got a silver on which one?
On the 16-way.
The 16-way.
Yep.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then, so a minute ago on the 4-way, you said you lost your tail flyer.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know what that means. And I'm guessing that a lot of our listeners don't know what that means. You guys, we get in here, we start these podcasts and y'all use all these words and all these terms, like everybody knows what you're talking about. We don't know what you're talking about. No, I'm sorry. Okay. So tell us what is a tail flyer? Give us the.
I'm talking with skydivers. I'm just going to use all the.
No, it's actually I really like it. I really like it that when we do these podcasts, everybody uses these terms because I get to ask and I get to learn. So it's fun.
Yeah. So our tail flyer is basically it's one of the 4 positions in 4-way. It is generally the one that he's the first guy to exit, kind of pulls everybody down the hill a little bit.
Okay.
And as my first 4-way coach says, he's always the one that gets screwed. You always screw the tail flyer.
Why is that?
Making up for everybody else's. If you're too wide, it's usually the tail flyer's problem and they got to pull it back together. If your turns aren't on point, the tail flyer is helping you get it
He's
back.
got to fix it.
Exactly.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
And so you said that he just had a hard landing or something and hurt an ankle or something?
Yeah. So he was training with us actually in a different team on our 16-way team. And man, those gopher holes sometimes will catch you. And he was running something out and caught a gopher hole at just the wrong time. And unfortunately ended up breaking his ankle. But the guy was tough as all get out. I mean, he stood right up, almost passed out from the pain, but walked into the hangar, and it took him 2 days to really figure out he'd broken it. So
2 days?
2 days.
With a broken ankle?
Broken ankle, yeah.
Okay.
As tough as nails.
All right, Laura, where are you originally from?
From Michigan.
Michigan?
Yeah. Yep.
And they say tough as all get out in Michigan? That's a Texas. That is a Southern saying. There's no way Michigan people say tough as all get out. That's Southern.
Yeah. My mom was from North Carolina, so I picked up a lot of my mannerisms.
Okay. All right. That makes more sense. Okay. Well, cool.
Joey, what's your background? We missed that part.
Oh, background. So been jumping since around 2000. Actually, not around. In 2000. From there, a bunch of military deployments, training, stuff like that. But did a lot of tummy time back in the day, a lot of 4-way, 8-way video, stuff like that throughout the military career.
Yeah, you're part of the Golden Knights.
I was, yeah. So I finished my career, luckily enough to get to fly the aircraft for the Golden Knights. So that was awesome, being a skydiver for however many years I was a jumper, to get to end my career in the military, going to air shows and football games and NASCAR races and stuff like that, which was amazing. Around that time is when I had met you, trying to do actually it was before the Knights. I got to the Knights, getting onto the big way scene and doing that kind of stuff. And I think we're gonna talk about those first record attempts here in a little bit. But from there, retired from the military in 2020, and then pretty much started living out here for the summers shortly after that. Meeting up with Lindsay, MFS teammate, about 4 years ago, and it's been history since then. And I think we've got close to 900 or so jumps together over the last 4 years. So looking forward to continuing that with her.
Cool.
That's cool. Joey, for the Golden Knights, I think I asked you this at Summerfest, but I don't remember. Do they always use the same plane, and what is it?
So yeah, we've when I was there initially, we had 3 Twin Otters. So they do a lot of their training, their tandems and stuff like that. The current 4-way team, or the 8-way team when I was there, or the VFS team with JRuss, while I was there, I'll jump out of the Twin Otter. When I was there at first, we had the Fokker F-27s. These are the aircraft that replaced the DC-3s in the airline business. So these were older aircraft. We had the last 2 that came off the assembly line in 1985 is when they came to the team. And those things were a beast to fly. It was, old school technology. I'm having to push fuel trimmers up and do stuff that you just don't have to do in the modern aircraft anymore. And those were unique because they had 2 back doors. It was like an otter door in the back, but there was 2 of them on either side. So they could, during an air show, get out really quickly, using both of those doors. We retired those and then picked up Dash 8s. So they have 2 Dash 8s that are there, and the 3 Twin Otters still.
Okay. And when they're training, are they the only ones on the plane pretty much?
Yep. Okay. So cool. I don't know if JRuss had this opportunity to do this, but if the VFS guys are training, JRuss did some jumps with them that it's literally 5 people in the aircraft. So that was it.
That's cool. So you're getting to altitude quick, man.
Yeah. I remember the 8-way guys one day were looking to do 20 jumps, and I remember them saying to me, "It's like, oh, don't worry, you're going to get tired before we do." And I was like, "Wait, what? I controlled this pace. You realize that, right?" The Packers hated me that day because it wasn't necessarily them. They were getting tired. But I was making the Packers work hard that day because the 8-way guys challenged me that I was going to get tired before that.
So you were determined.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool. That's
But those
awesome.
guys are great. I mean, talk about, they're getting all these jumps and training and stuff like that. But those guys were hustling. They would land, run into the hangar, grab their next rigs. They're running back out to the aircraft. So those guys were awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. So a friend of Laura's and mine, I think he's a friend of yours, Chris Normandy. Laura,
Yeah.
is that
Yes.
someone you know? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So he messaged me, I don't know, a couple months ago now, and I've got the memory of a concussed goldfish. So after a couple seconds, it's gone. But he said, "Oh, I've got this friend. She does research on hypoxia, and maybe that would make an interesting episode." And in my mind, immediately I jumped to Joey, who is very familiar with hypoxia, has given seminars on it, like weather hold seminars, and talks to people about it. And however, I think that between the two of you, I'd love to hear kind of, Laura, if you don't mind talking about your research and what it is you do, and give us I don't know, what do we need to know before we get deeper into it?
All right, hold on,
Yeah.
JRuss. Before Laura goes, you've got to explain to all the listeners why we hear a bird.
Oh, can you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, because it's not. There's a little ring when I'm talking that is obvious that my mic is activated, and I thought maybe it was slipping under the radar. Every year in the hangar, the main hangar at Sky Chicago, birds nest, and every year we're coming back during training and stuff's like, hey, can you clean that bird up? Because a little guy will do a wingsuit base jump and not make it, and there's this little creature on the ground. This is the second time in the last, I think the last one, I didn't have to do this last year, but the year before, where he made it, or she, I have no idea whether it's male or female, but the bird made it, but is now injured on the hangar floor. And it's busy and there's people walking around. So this little guy was maybe 2 weeks ago, flopping around on the floor, right wing clearly messed up. And the parents are like hopping around with it, but then someone would walk by and the parents would fly away and then they come back, and I'm looking at it happen. And then the ground guy came walking in and didn't realize the bird's just being as unobtrusive as it can be. And he almost killed it by stepping on it. And then I was like, nah, I got to go pick this bird up. It's just going to get trampled here. So picked it up, and she, whatever, has been with us for the last couple of weeks. And living in one of our dog's old carriers, and lately practicing flying, and is very good eater. So I find the universe to be an ironic place. He is eating wet cat food.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
Well, cats are what's called obligate carnivores, which means they have to eat meat. And so that's great food for a little bird. It just needs a bunch of protein, and hopefully there's a few fillers in there to fatten him up. But he's doing little test flights, and despite the fact that just before this episode started, I fed him or her. He's chirping because he wants more food, which is pretty common all day long.
So that's a good sign. Every time you hear the chirp, that means the bird is healthy.
Yeah, he's ready to eat more, and he'll probably do one more test flight tonight. And the next couple of days are going to be a sunset. Let's take him over to the hangar and see if we can reunite him with the parents.
That's cool. All right. Sorry, Laura. We would love to hear from you.
No, not at all. That's fantastic. Good on you, JRuss, because that's not everybody would do that. So that's pretty noble. Yeah. So, I guess I actually first got into hypoxia really was because at one point I had actually just emailed the parachutist, Laura Sharp, on there and said, hey, I've had this experience. I'm a doctor. Starting skydiving. Is there anything that you'd actually, like as far as an article wise? And she actually asked me about doing an article on hypoxia. And it was the moment that I started looking into it to write that article that I realized that there's actually just not a lot out there about hypoxia in skydivers as far as actual research, real data, because a lot of our data, a lot of our requirements, things that we know is based on more pilots and aviation and what they go through, what they put their bodies through. And that's where we kind of get our assumptions on what happens to us. But there's a lot different things that happen. So when I started looking at that, there was a couple things that I found, and one of the best studies that I found was really just following this one skydiver over the course of 2 days and like 3 skydives, and it showed like, wow, this guy actually got far more hypoxic than we ever thought that he would, and this was normal altitudes.
Hmm.
So I started thinking like, man, it would be really cool to actually start to see that or see if that was really true, but in obviously more than one person. Maybe this was just an outlier, maybe there was something going on, who knows. So what I actually started to do was I ended up doing research on specifically like pulse oximeters, which a lot of people now with COVID have started to get more familiar with, but they really, they measure the amount of oxygen in your blood at any given time. And there's all kinds out there. There's the ones that clamp on your finger. There's the ones that go like a ring. Some are good, some are not so good. So I wanted to find one that we could use skydiving that wasn't going to put anybody in danger, that you could use maybe under a glove, something that was easy and just not going to get in the way when you went to pull or do what you needed to do. So I got those. I got some other monitoring equipment, like a vest that you could wear that would measure other kind of details, heart rate and movement. And I started collecting that data with FlySight data and looking at, okay, at these specific altitudes, what's actually happening to us? What's happening to us on the plane as we're going up? What's happening to us whenever we're just shuffling around in the plane, maybe trying to get ready to get out? What happens when we jump out? When do we actually see that rebound? And it really started to surprise me, to be honest. I started off in very young, healthy subjects. Just, kind of people in their 20s or 30s, people that really didn't have a lot of medical problems, and just seeing what would happen. And even in people like that, normal altitudes being, 13.5 MSL, was starting to see drops on a normal skydive down into the high 80s, mid 80s. With enough go arounds, you could even pop down into the high 70s. And, a normal, coming from a doctor, you want to stay over 92 to kind of be in that normal range. That's where if you come into my hospital, you come into my ER, and I see that you're under 92, I start to get worried and want to put you on oxygen. So starting to see these episodes where people are going down to 80%, is concerning to a certain extent. So that's kind of where this all started. And that was a big surprise because, as you know, we shouldn't have to start to wear oxygen until 15,000 feet. That's kind of, that's what our, that's, what we're expected, what we expect. But we start to see those drops much earlier, and I would start to see those drops depending on various other factors, somewhere even around 10, 11,000. And they would just kind of continue to go down from there. So, and there's a lot of other factors. There's things like the things that are different between us and pilots, truthfully, are, we have these 25, 30-pound rigs on. We're crammed, chest to back in the plane. You have a hard time taking a full breath. The heat, the dehydration that we experience on training days, and all of that adds up. And every little bit, every time there was one more of those factors introduced, I would see those shifts in the oxygen ranges, and it would become apparent. I do a lot of my training in Arizona. And so I would, put the monitors on and on people on the hottest days in August or July. And then I'd see it in the, the winter months, or you'd see it on a morning load where maybe there weren't as many people there, or, an afternoon load where it was crammed with people, and you would see these swings in how hypoxic people were actually getting. So it was interesting to see those factors. But most of the stuff that I've done has been in the younger, healthy population. And so that's where I'd like to kind of expand it now to actually look at, the older skydiver population, or folks with the medical issues, smokers, things like that, to see how much that's also affecting us.
So how many different individuals did you test, and how many skydives? Is that a fair term? Is that the right terminology that you would use?
Definitely. So 7 total subjects, so 7
Okay.
total people,
Okay.
total skydivers. And then skydives, I have easily, it's about, I think last I checked was about 120 skydives worth of data in there.
From those 7 people?
Yes, cumulative amongst all of them.
All
So,
right.
and so anybody, when you do research, you really, you have to have, okay, well, how do I know that that's not just because their fingers are moving around a lot or because of whatever it is they're doing in the air. And so there's a lot of things that can cause that error. So I tried to help that a little bit by actually also having some of that monitoring equipment worn in the tunnel. So to try to kind of see, okay, if just the movement of having your hands moving around when you're doing normal skydive activities, does that cause that? And it didn't at all.
It didn't affect, the tunnel did not affect the equipment.
No.
Wow.
You would see a little bit of error, but I mean, it would, the line would kind of be going like this around a 93, 94% jump. And then whenever you get in the air, I mean, it was dropping way down.
Yeah.
So.
Man, that's interesting. So what are your goals for, I mean, are you still trying to collect more data, or what are you hoping to do next, I guess?
Yeah. So the data that I have now, I'd like that to come out to the skydiving community, more of just a, hey, this is what's happening. The biggest things that I'd like to do, like I was saying, is kind of expand that to a broader population, because not everybody in skydiving is young with no medical issues. There's a very vast range of people in the sport. But the other thing too that's tricky with this, and this is where it makes a big difference on kind of how to present this information, is that I work in the ER, so I see a lot of physiology of people. I see a lot of the whole spectrum of people, and I see a lot of different things there in the terms of numbers. People sometimes get worried about the numbers of their heart rate, numbers of their oxygen, numbers of their blood pressure, and I always tell people, we treat people, we don't treat numbers, and that applies here too, because I've seen the numbers go low, but what we don't actually know is, do those low numbers actually mean anything in your performance, in your your ability to
cognition and
process?
Yeah.
So we know in the extreme events, and I know we're going to get into that, they absolutely do. But what we can't really answer is on the general skydives where we see these swings in the oxygen. Does that mean anything to the normal skydiver from the perspective of, is it actually affecting me?
Yeah.
And so that would be the question to really answer.
So is it truly a safety issue? And if it is, what do we need to do about it?
Exactly.
It is a safety issue.
Well, no, I know it is. I know it is. I don't.
Yeah.
Yes. But so JRuss, I know you got a bunch of questions, but before we go too far, Laura, will you give us, I think most of our listeners probably know what hypoxia is, but I still think it would be helpful and interesting to hear from you. What is hypoxia? What is it? How does it present? And then maybe Joey, since you've had a firsthand personal experience with hypoxia, after that, Joey, maybe you can share a little bit from your perspective. What is hypoxia? What's it like? Why does it matter to us as skydivers? Yeah. So Laura, if you'll go first, please.
Definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, hypoxia is, you need a certain amount of oxygen, both kind of just dissolved in your blood and then held on to by blood cells to get to your brain, your kidneys, your heart, all the different parts of your body to help you to continue to function normally. So hypoxia is when that doesn't happen, when you're not getting enough oxygen and all of a sudden there's not enough there to create the energy that you need to continue to function. So everybody's a little bit different, to be honest. And one of the things, so for instance, at NASA, when I was there for a little while, what they would do is they would actually put a mask on you and they would start to take down your oxygen very little by little. And they would start to let you see, and you would mark a chart to say, this is what I'm feeling now. This is what I'm feeling now. And it starts off very subtle. It's giddiness, it's dizziness, it's lightheadedness, you start to almost get that I've had a couple too many drinks sort of feeling, and it starts to go very quickly from there all the way to, at a certain point, your useful consciousness just goes away. You can't think straight, your vision starts to go, your color vision especially starts to go. And then at some point you will completely lose consciousness and not be able to function at all.
When you say that people are different, what kind of ranges do you see, and what's an acceptable level of saturated oxygen, or what you get out of the pulse ox?
Yeah, it is a tricky question. So whereas kind of anybody, normal healthy adult, you'd put an pulse oximeter, you should not expect to see anything less than 94 to 95. People have been smoking most of their life. I probably wouldn't even blink if it was an 88 for them. And, we would just say, no, that's probably just them. But I would say, I mean, for almost anybody, by the time you're starting to get down below 86, 87 across the board, that's where we really start to get very concerned about the effects.
Joey, do you mind sharing a little bit, kind of what is hypoxia, and tell us a little bit about your experience, if you don't mind?
Yeah, for me, so like we talked about my aviation history with the Army, been flying in aviation since 2004 with that. Like Laura was talking about, at NASA, we go through those tests. I've been in an oxygen chamber. You go through all that same things. Like we go through intimate training about technically there's 4 different types of hypoxia. Hypoxic hypoxia is the one we deal with as skydivers. And going through those altitude chambers, like you're sitting there, yep, 2 + 2 is 6. And you swear up and down that 2 + 2 is 6, without a doubt. I'm like, yep, this is right. I'm filling out this paper, and I am extremely confident in all my answers. And I go back and look at them and go, first did a second grader write this, with the handwriting and stuff like that. And just the answers are just, you're like, how the hell I thought I was 100% confident that I knew what I was doing. And like she said about the color chart, you sit there and they start taking you down. They start, taking the oxygen, increasing the pressure altitude in the chamber. And all of a sudden, like, okay, go on 100% oxygen. So you put your mask on while you're looking at a color chart. I swear I can see all these colors, and I've never been, down the psychedelic realm, but man, when you get on that oxygen, it is like it's coming at you in 3D, 3D. You're like, oh, wow. Like I literally, it was black and white apparently, but I thought I could see the colors.
You're saying all the colors just come back?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. One moment I put that mask on, I was like, oh, there it is. But wow. I could have told you that I could see all those colors prior to that.
Interesting. So you really have no idea that you're hypoxic? No,
you have no idea.
I think everything's normal. You think you're good.
No, that's not even it. And this is one of the most insidious things about hypoxia. And hopefully one of you guys can elaborate on this, but the first symptom of hypoxia is, somebody say it. Joey kind of touched on it with the alcohol thing, but isn't it euphoria?
Yeah. It can be. It can be.
Yeah.
From my experience, like it is like Laura hinted at, like being drunk. Like I think histotoxic, I believe, or hypemic is technically, it's being drunk. You're in a form of hypoxia. Because I think your skin cells, your tissues aren't able to absorb it because the oxygen or the alcohol and stuff like that's no way. I don't know the medical side of that, but depending on, like I tell people, for me personally, Laura can correct me if I'm wrong, but like if you know somebody and they're an angry drunk or they get super giddy and stuff like that when they're drunk and they start acting that way in the plane, they might be hypoxic. So it could be anger. Somebody's messed up their seatbelts in their way, or they can't get, their gear checks right, and they're getting angry about that. They might be hypoxia. So it could go through that spectrum, either side of that. And you don't recognize it. You don't know. I was sitting through I was going through a nitrox class, scuba diving, and going down and it's the same thing with being, narcosis. It's kind of similar, circumstances going on there. And a guy was saying, he's like, no, I've been down that deep before, and I know what I'm doing and stuff like that. And like, he was just like, I would know. And I'm like, but that's it. You don't. Like, you're kind of proving the point that you don't know. Like, we did the same thing with, doing the deep dive training that I did, scuba diving. Like, the instructor's writing on a whiteboard, 2 + 2, and she's expecting you to hold up 4 fingers. If you don't, then she knows you're already getting narked. So different side of the spectrum between skydiving and scuba diving, but, so yeah, intimately familiar with that. And we're going to get into the situation here in a little bit that we're, going to show the video about. I know what my symptoms are. From being in the altitude chamber, I know what the first symptoms that I'm going to recognize are anyway. Not necessarily my first symptoms, but the ones that I know I'm going to recognize. My fingertips get numb and my lips get numb. If you've ever, had too much to drink sometimes, and you get that kind of feeling too, so I know that those are my signs of it. And this comes into play later on with the video.
Yeah. Laura, have you, or Chris too, have you guys been part of a high altitude big wave yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how high did you guys go?
I think the highest I've gone was 18.5.
Okay, so pretty high. And that's AGL, above the ground, right? 18.5. And
Yes.
so you probably didn't, was it next to the ocean, or did you already have some amount of elevation?
We were definitely under 1,000. I think that one was 600 feet.
Okay. Yeah. So 18.5, that's 19.1. Just for reference, I think base camp of Everest is about 20,000 feet. So
Mhm.
you were just under that. And Chris, what about you?
Pretty much the exact same scenario. 18.5, and it was here right outside of, Luling, Texas, which is probably at like 800 feet, something like that, 900
So do
feet.
you guys remember, when did the oxygen start in the aircraft, or what altitude?
No, we never had oxygen, bro.
You're kidding? Or you're
I am
serious?
not kidding. I am
You went to
absolutely serious.
18.5 AGL without oxygen?
Yes, sir.
One time?
One time.
One
Why?
time. Holy cow.
That's what they said we were doing, and they said it was okay. And I was a young jumper. I didn't know any better. I thought it was okay.
That is wildly unsafe. Wow. I mean, nothing against you, Chris, but holy cannoli.
Well, I'll tell you what was explained, because I remember, I think, as best as I can remember, I think I was like, hey, do we need oxygen? Or maybe somebody asked about oxygen. And the comment that it's in my mind, whether this actually was said or not, or but I think what was said was, well, no, we're not up there for long enough to necessitate oxygen. I think that's what was communicated. And I was like,
somebody could have said that.
I was like,
true.
Okay, I guess. I don't know, so.
Laura, do you remember when it started?
Yeah, for like typically around 12,000 AGLs when they start to pop that on.
Yeah. And I think, Joey, what's the reg? Do you remember?
I know it's, I can quote the Army stuff, which I think is pretty close to the federal stuff, is above 10 for an hour, above 12 for a half hour, and above 14, technically. Or that is for pilots. Yeah. It's 14 for pilots, I believe. But, I think 15 is, we got different stuff for skydivers with that.
That sounds right to me, though, as far as, I'm assuming that's in the FARs under Part 91 that we operate under as civilian skydiving. Laura, you're nodding in agreement. Is that your understanding?
Yep.
Okay. Cool. So just to give some context, because I do want to show the video from Joey, because it's so shocking. Joey's thousands and thousands of skydives, tons of experience. I think this video is from around 2015 when we were doing the 164 way. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the first attempt was 177-ish. That's what this would have been.
So, and there's context needed, because when you see the video, for anybody who is an experienced skydiver, it's gonna shock you. And luckily everybody was okay, and there is an impact in the video, but she was okay and Joey was okay. But the context that I want to provide is that an entire plane's oxygen system wasn't functioning correctly, and there were multiple people on that load who were not getting oxygen at all for a 1 hour ride to 19,000 feet. And the other bit of context that I want to add is that in a big way setting, and I haven't done a lot of belly big ways, but on the free fly side, those are, for everybody other than me, I think they're a little bit stressful. For me, it's the most relaxing time of my day. But you're kind of internalizing whatever is going on for you. You're mentally prepping the dive, but because we all know that we're in a deprived oxygen situation, everybody's doing the best that they can to just stay calm and quiet, their thoughts to themselves, not a lot of moving around, really not a lot of conversation that happens in the plane. Most people are, to be honest, a little bit stressed out, so they're probably using a little bit more oxygen than they would maybe want to be, so they're trying to keep it low. And so even as some of the symptoms that we're going to talk about, recognizing blue lips or giddy behavior that's inappropriate to the situation, everybody's really focused on not having that. Their whole goal is to just, I'm going to sit here quietly and not talk to anybody. So even though you're in a plane with 22 other people, you're really kind of isolated in that moment. And so it's not like everybody's got a lot of their own shit going on, and they're not so much, at least in 2015. I think on subsequent records, Joey's given seminars. The situation created a lot of awareness in the community about the problems that can arise. But at least at that time, even on the organizer side, we'd never had a plane malfunction that way. And I know that I was not thinking along those lines, that we needed to be as vigilant about hypoxia as we needed to be. I think that it's been years now since this happened. Joey's already gone through the flaming that he got for flying this way. Want to thank him once again for being willing to share. I mean, nobody likes to see their mistakes, but this is a rough one. So I'm going to share this video. Sorry, go ahead.
I would love to add just a little more backstory on that too.
Sure.
Like what was happening in the plane. From what I remember, I felt like I had oxygen coming through a tube. Like I felt like there was flow. Right, I'm sitting in the back by the door. This is when it kind of starts to talk about the tingling in my fingers and lips. Is that I was back by the door. We're at 19,000 feet. It's freezing back there. I am very adamant now about wearing hand warmers. I don't care if it's 70 degrees on the ground, 80 degrees. I will have hand warmers of them in the back of the plane so that I know that I can still feel my hands. Are my hands tingling or are they cold? So like that's one prevention thing, that I do now. But in that plane, it felt like we were getting oxygen. I remember Reese from the Golden Knights. He was a plane captain. And Brian Guile was having issues. And we were all told, hey, everyone fly your slot. The first pod isn't going to build because Brian's going to stay with the plane. So we're going to leave him with the plane. And that was going to be that. Because like his face was like seizing up and stuff. So there was something going on in the plane. They ended up giving him 2 oxygen tubes, so then he felt better, so then we all sent it, so that's some of the backstory behind that. And then after JRuss, I didn't want to show anybody this video at first. And months later, I showed it to JRuss. And, there was a lot of comments online of like, well, how did they let him get out? Who was the plane captain? Why did you guys get out of the plane? And it goes back to what we talked about, a little bit ago. No one knows. You have 20 drunk friends, that are extremely drunk. Who's driving home?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to,
Who is the voice of reason in that moment when nobody's got enough oxygen?
Yeah, exactly.
Just a situation we never had before.
Yeah. And you can pay attention, like you said, JRuss, the whole plane had some form of hypoxia. I was in the Aussie pod docking on the Golden Knights. Those guys said they were behind me and just overshot the formation. If you look at, as I get back in towards, my sector, take a close look at our sector. Nobody's there. Nobody. And we're talking about 2 to 3 pods in front of me that are some of the best skydivers in the world that were nowhere near their slot. All
right. Well, let's give this a go.
While you're pulling that up, JRuss, when I hear people talk about it, it almost sounds like a combination of being drunk and being high.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it sounds like when people talk about it, it's almost like they talk about some like the time, like almost like time dilation. Like how things just feel off and weird. And anyway, I don't know. Is it?
I think I'm ready. Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. How am I doing? Is it showing?
Yeah, we see them in the door on the plane.
Here we go. That's Macca, I think, is about to leave.
And Joey, is this your view?
This is inside view, yeah.
And this is from what altitude? Sorry.
Around 19.
Okay. Goodness.
Yeah, so we'll back up and just digest this a little bit. It's just miraculous that you're even head down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so the part that caught me when I looked at it was here. Oh my God, the speed you're going through human beings
Oh my
at,
goodness.
it is like, and guys, I'm guessing everybody caught on, but Joey has overshot and is now flying backwards at that speed. No idea where he's going. There's an impact here, right there. Looked like a full flip. That was Jesse Brownlow. Whoops, Jesse Brownlow was the recipient of that. Sorry if I'm. God damn it. Jesse Brownlow was the right. Is that right, Joey?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So she got hit. I think she had bruised ribs.
I think we had impacted like my shoulder and headish into her hips and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. She was able to continue jumping. Joey was sadly sat down after this jump and cut from further attempts on safety issue, which, to be honest, to Joey in retrospect was perhaps not the right decision, but it was the one that we made. But then also, so there's a second impact here. I think, is that Joe Ablin?
Yeah, I missed Joe Ablin the first time, so I figured I'd come in.
Yeah, go back and hit him again.
Yeah.
A very, very low flying slot, not really an attempt to get back up and then break off. Does that ring kind of true to you, Joey? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the biggest thing about this too, or I would say the biggest, like, I don't honestly remember what I remember.
Yeah.
Or what is from this video. I remember
like this is slow motion.
And watch the burble that Jesse gets. Like, Jesse gets a burble from me going by him.
Yeah. Gosh.
But like, I don't remember what I remember from the skydive. I don't remember what I remember from the video. The thing that I vividly remember leaving the aircraft was black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, because I was docking on the Golden Knights. And that's all my focus was on, was docking on them until I went by them at a very, very high rate of speed. And like JRuss said, to the organizers' defense, they didn't see this video. I remember grabbing the memory card, borrowing somebody's computer to look at this, and almost getting sick. You know, I literally almost got sick. I remember closing that laptop and being like, nobody is seeing that. And then going and trying to find JRuss and like, who did I hit? Are they okay? You know, kind of thing. And I don't, like I said, I don't remember what I do or don't remember of that skydive except for black and yellow, you know, and then something happening. And where my memories from this video, I don't know. And then, like I said, the organizer's defense, you know, the outside video of this is me just hauling ass backsliding. That's all they see is the backslide portion of this when I'm missing my slot, turning to try and stop. And thankfully I was slowing some when I hit something, you know, because, yeah.
But I mean, if you show that video to any sane free flyer or really any sane skydiver, they're going to, I mean, it is so fast in traffic.
Man.
And that what came out later, the whole plane's oxygen system failing, and some people were getting oxygen, but most people were not. Brian Guile was nearly unconscious. And the context with Brian is that he actually has a legitimate medical condition, which it's not sickle cell anemia, but something like that, where he just doesn't, his saturation isn't that great, which is ironic because he's a super fit guy. But he didn't even realize it until that time. I mean, he was blue. He was semi-conscious in the back of the plane when they shoved another oxygen tube in his mouth.
Like up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it was a junk show for sure. Yeah, but the video is so shocking in the speed, the closing speed in and among people. So the questions that I had are kind of Laura, Joey related, maybe more Laura, but you know, there's a variety. Let's see. I'll start at the top. Sorry. Training days where we jump 16 jumps in a row are way less tiring than training days where we have to stop and wait for a shutdown and sit on the ground. And that seems sort of antithetical to what you're both saying about time spent above a certain altitude means that you are more in jeopardy of hypoxia. And I'm guessing Joey is familiar with what I'm saying because he's done full-time training, and Laura, I don't know if you would be, or Chris, but like the days where we bang them out, we're on the deck grilling by 4:30, and I'm in bed at 8, and I had a great day, and I'm not tired. And then the days where we stretch it out until sunset, and we got 10 jumps waiting on whatever, I'm exhausted when I get home. And I don't have a good explanation, and that kind of flies in the face of what you're saying about spending time up there. So wondering if either one of you have made that same connection and why that might be.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, we've definitely put 12 to 14 jumps in a day in Arizona. And I totally agree. I mean, down there, especially because their days are so short, especially in the summertime, you're trying to get 14 back to back. And I mean, those days are far less tiring than when we'll go there with our 8-way or 16-way team and sometimes be doing one up, one down, and it'll stretch out. So from the physical perspective, I can definitely relate. The oxygen stuff from that perspective actually does fly in the opposite face, even the data that I was able to see. But I can let Joey speak to his experience before I say anything about that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, same thing. I don't know if there's a correlation there or not due to hypoxia, or what that is of just just any day. I think we could say the same thing with if I go through and push through this day, I feel better, as opposed to, well, I start this, I'm going to go sit on the couch for a while, then I'm going to go back, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question, Joey. I know you talked about doing the high altitude training for the military. Did they give you feedback on how, like, what were the effects at different altitudes that they took you to, or simulated altitudes? How high did you go?
I think it may have been up to 25, and it was definitely 18 or so. I believe there is in some of the runs that we do. It's a rapid decompression. So there, you got high altitude, and it's more of a drill than anything else. That, hey, get your damn oxygen mask on. When they, that you hear it. They blow the pressure in the place, and then you're like, okay, yep, get on oxygen, and we get on. Without looking at the specific charts that they had for us and stuff, of and I'm sure Laura has looked deeply into these goes, oh, your useful times of consciousness and stuff like that at different altitudes and stuff like that. I don't remember directly, without looking at those charts, what those things are.
Laura, do you want to add on to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, the charts that he's talking about are very enlightening, but that was actually one comment that I was going to make about that 19,500 jump that you were talking about with no oxygen. Because, I mean, when you're starting to get close to between 20 and 22,000 feet, you're talking your useful time of consciousness is really going down to under 10 minutes. I mean, that's once you hit about 22, that's kind of the average right there. And then once you get to 25, you might have 3 to 5 minutes. Once you get to 30, you're talking maybe 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes if you're lucky. So it goes down very quick.
I read a book about some people who summited Everest, and I believe in that book they said if somehow you could magically be transported from sea level to the top of Everest, you would be unconscious in minutes and dead maybe in a half an hour. Just to give context to like how dire the situation really is, when I mean it's scaling, of course, and 20,000 is not, what's Everest, 29,000, a little over 29,000.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly the same, but on a skydive where you're supposed to be performing at a pretty high level, to think you're not going to have a supplemental oxygen, like Chris, I hope you can see the problem with somebody saying, oh, we're not going to be up there that long. Okay, maybe, but unless you were in a rocket ship, if you're on a jump plane, you're up there for a while. It doesn't climb. I mean, the ceiling, what's the ceiling on a caravan is like a 25,000 ceiling, and Otter's right around there as well. Like the performance really starts to suffer when you start getting up in that thin air. So you are up there for quite a while.
Joe, can I ask Joey a question?
Yeah, of course.
are you, and maybe you can't remember because kind of what you were saying a second ago, but was there a moment of like coming back to yourself, like becoming aware again, or
I mean,
not really?
I could say that I remember the canopy ride.
Okay.
Because I was sitting there without a shoe on. I did lose a shoe on that impact. And I remember being under canopy with a shoe on and trying to navigate 170 some other bodies or whatever it was. Other than that, I don't remember what was video and what was skydive.
So is it, I mean, is this an overstatement to say that it was like waking up from a blackout, or is that too drastic? Is that not that drastic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a blur on where it
Okay.
all, I remember being on the plane. I remember thinking about, going, docking on the Golden Knights. Again, like I don't know what is video and what is memory in my head anymore.
Gotcha. Okay.
As far as that goes, but I do remember a canopy ride. I remember sitting there with my, being under a canopy with my shoe not on.
Wow.
And,
But it sounds like from your recollection a few minutes ago that you watched the video and then understood you hit somebody. Is that fair?
I don't know. And that's, I mean, I guess that says enough right there. I don't know. I don't remember what is memory and what is video at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I could have landed, like I said, I remember being on a canopy without a shoe, and I could have landed and we're like, hey man, I need to see somebody's computers because I don't know what the hell just happened.
Man.
And I don't know at this point.
Wow.
Isn't
there a story about a couple of guys in Antarctica jumping or something, and one of the guys died, and it ended up being because of hypoxia or something? Does that story ring a bell? No. Okay. Okay, that's fine.
There was a oxygen related fatality a couple of years ago with oh gosh, what was his name? I really should know his name. The lead tandem examiner for USPA, maybe. Oh gosh, what was his name?
Noonan?
But they were what? Noonan, yeah. They were doing a pretty crazy jump to like 40 grand, and the oxygen system was, I mean, hopefully I'm not up for a lawsuit if I'm misquoting what the details of the story, because it was pretty hush hush. But they got up to 40. The oxygen system didn't work. The tandem pair was about to leave and got pulled back in kind of at the last second, and the instructor died, who is Tom Noonan. And in the very hush hush view of the video that has still not been circulated, I don't think, everybody was messed up, and they continued to circle. He was basically at 40 grand without supplemental oxygen, I want to say, for about 8 minutes, and died. Which, I mean, Tom was a great dude. He was a super knowledgeable skydiver. They were trying to do some super altitude thing. So there was an accident 2-3 years ago. I don't think it was last year. I think it was longer ago than that. But I don't remember anything about Antarctica.
Okay.
Although I did.
I think the story that I read about, I'm talking about like a long time ago, like, 15, 20 years ago, or maybe even more. I don't know.
I don't remember it.
Yeah.
So other questions that I had, Laura, you quoted some numbers for people's saturation for like a normal person, healthy person, 94, 95. That's at rest?
Yes. Yeah.
Does it change as exertion?
No, it's at rest, but it's with exertion too. Like you
as well.
Them under, absolutely.
Okay.
That should not change or drop in a significant way.
And I felt that it might be important if someone is monitoring that to say that carbon monoxide does not deplete that number or falsely reads that number, in case people do start tracking their numbers. Is that something that we even need to mention?
No, there shouldn't. You're in a whole, honestly, like other dire straits if you're getting to the point that carbon monoxide is making that worse, but it really should not have any significant impact on it.
So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was that there are a number of devices these days that monitor this stuff. I can't remember that. There's one with a funny name like Wahoo or something like that. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? It's like what is it?
Whoop.
Whoop. Yeah. It's like a little, looks like a wristwatch kind of thing, but it's a little more square, like an Apple Watch. But it does your sleep patterns. It does your oxygen saturation, I think. Variety of different metrics for body performance. And I guess what I was going to ask of Joey or anybody, Laura, whoever, is if we're all going to eventually be part of these high altitude things, and everyone is in some ways we're so different, right? Like our numbers could be different, and my resting heart rate and Joey's and yours they're all different for sure. And it's not until you really start looking at that information on a regular basis that you start to even understand the workings of your own body. And so for those of us who are going to probably continue to participate in high altitude stuff, especially Laura, do you think it's worthwhile for people to have, there's a ring, kind of, it's like a big bulky ring, but it does kind of the same thing where it, you know what I'm talking about? But do you think that that's something that we in the weeks and months prior to that we should be getting our own baselines and understanding those kind of data points? I mean, I'm sure Joey would have loved to have that information prior to that jump in 2015, you know?
So to be honest, I mean, I've taken them on big ways before and kind of shown people sort of what's happening and, you know, what's happening in the plane, what's happening when you put oxygen on. And truthfully, the way that I kind of view it, especially in those settings, is almost like it's a really nice fail safe, to be honest. Like, so especially the ones that you're talking about, the Aura Ring, the Woot, and there are a couple other ones. They're not really great as far as, man, this is exactly what I am. But what they can give you is a general sense of like something's gone horribly wrong. Like in Joey's case, that thing would have fired off and said, there is something going on. And even though I can't tell you you're at 75, I can tell you you were here and you are now down here. And that can be really comforting as a participant, as a competitor, as somebody who's just like, okay, I mean, I can kind of look at that and say, everything seems to be functional. I feel good. I know I'm good, and I'm good to go. And it should be beyond even getting a baseline or any of that. I mean, and the one thing I pulled this out so I could actually show it to you. I don't know if it'll show up very well, so I apologize if it doesn't. But for instance, so this is kind of like a typical graph that I'll get on a high altitude jump. So you can absolutely see, like, this is where we're starting over here. And as we're starting to get altitude and we're going down, 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 and you can see the minute that we put oxygen on, pops right back up. And then that second dip is whenever we're taking it on to get out of or taking it off to get out of the plane. So you can tell in both instances you have that. But overall, whenever you have that data, I mean, you can see, like, I'm okay. And I know I'm okay.
Can you hold that back up for us? That's super interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So the extreme spike is when you put the oxygen on, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And then it slowly tapers just a tiny bit, but not really much. And then it drops down.
Yes.
And then it kind of goes back up somewhat quickly.
Yeah.
What altitudes are you able to say? Do you have any idea? Are you able to tell us, like, where is that happening? How quickly is that happening, and where is that happening? Yes.
So are you talking about this one where you're coming up on free fall?
Yes.
Those ones are a little bit trickier.
Okay.
So those ones, the problem with that data is that the one thing that's really bad with these devices is movement.
Oh, okay.
And so in free fall, I don't know that I would totally trust that data of when it's coming back up.
Okay.
But I mean, you can see, like, by the time you're hitting, because what I would do is more or less kind of take the time chunk, and that time chunk of that complete, how long it takes to get up is no more than 30 seconds.
Okay.
Which means, I mean, you're maybe halfway through a high altitude jump by that point that you should
not even halfway, right? Yeah. I mean, 30 seconds, if you're doing, that's not even, that might even be what, 10, 5,000 feet?
Yeah, give or take.
Right.
I mean, you said, and I agree, 12,000 feet is a very typical let the oxygen start.
Yep.
But you were down at like 86 or 88 there in the bottom of that valley. I mean, definitely below 90.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So whenever you're looking at this, you're talking about the big one. There is under 80. It's under 80. Under 80, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if that's 12,000 feet, you were in jeopardy right then, right? And luckily we're getting out a minute or two later,
And there's a more impressive one. This one I actually keep with me, just to kind of show people just how bad it can get. So in 16 way in Arizona, typical altitudes, we get out at 13.5. And there was one instance there that we were there around noon over Labor Day, and they put us on about 5 go arounds because it's a busy airspace. We can't help it. It's just, it's right. And we understand that, but we were up there for a long time, and I happened to have the equipment on, and you can see exactly how bad it got for us up there. So what we're seeing here is under 90, under 80, really down into the low 70s there for a little while before we're able to get out. And I mean, we
right.
were there and we were feeling it too. Like we knew it, but I knew exactly how bad it was getting with the numbers. So it
And
was
this was at
impressive.
what altitude?
So this was typical jump altitude.
This is like 13.5,
Yep.
14,000
Yep.
feet.
Yep.
Wow.
Go find that person who said, "Oh, we're not up there for very long," and give them a slap on the side of the head.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
drop zone doesn't exist anymore. But, wow.
So, I
Oh
mean,
my gosh, dude.
we never have a time cap, guys, but we always seem to stick around an hour. I think our longest episode's been, and we're at about an hour. But and I don't want to shut the conversation on more things. And Joey, for sure, if you've got more things to share, because it was such a personal experience, like let's get that out there. The questions that I had that I feel like to wrap up that hopefully both of you guys can answer. I'm sure Joey's had lots of time to introspect about the events of that day. What can people do? What can they do before the event? What can they do in the moment to keep aware, to be aware for others, and sort of am I my brother's keeper moment of how can I look at the other people on the plane? And I think if we can, what is there anything? I mean, these are probably some life choice questions. Don't be a smoker, maybe. But what can people what can people do? I've got a big way in 6 months. What do I do to try and limit that? And are there things we can do?
And my question that I want to just throw in there, because it goes right along with basically very similar. What are the main things that you want the skydiving community to know about hypoxia?
I'll start it off if that's all right. For me, this is definitely something I did want to talk about, and Laura can back me up or shoot me down on this. But in 2015, like I can self-admit that I wasn't in good shape, and then you've got the stress of the big way and everything else going on with that. So the biggest thing that, I would like people to hear is that, yeah, this isn't a solution for if you find yourself in this situation, but like you said, 6 months, I'm coming up onto a big way camp or whatever the deal may be, is taking care of your physical fitness, taking care of the mental side of those things too. So hopefully you're getting rid of some of those stressors, extra stressors out of the way as far as that goes. Obviously, we can't limit that as much as we can, but the physical fitness side of it, your nutrition going up to it, and then even, the day of, as you're in these events, making sure you're using that downtime to rest, making sure you're hydrating, making sure you're eating properly throughout those events, and trying to manage that stress as best you can with those things. Those are the things you can directly impact during that day. And then, like I said, the physical fitness part and nutrition part leading up to those events, I think, is the number one thing we can, help with in immediately on that.
Laura, from something that Joey just said, as far as hydrating and resting both make perfect sense. One of the things that I think I remember again from reading about people going to the top of Everest is that is nutrition, and that all of those people end up coming down 20 pounds lighter than they started the trip, and that at that altitude, is it fair or accurate to say that your body is burning more calories to try and just do basic body functioning?
In the setting of something as strenuous as Everest over that amount of time, definitely. The typical skydive probably doesn't quite encapsulate that same.
Okay. More, Joey?
No, that's about it. I mean, it's I think it's a whole nother podcast to possibly get into solutions and what we can do as a team and community to what are the answers. You know, like who's making that call to not send that plane. You know, what are those limits? You know, I think that might be, you know, stuff to, as a community, as a big way organization, the belly flyers, the vertical, like, you know, what are our go no go in those situations? What are the hard passes on that kind of stuff? You know, and then, you know, and that's just from our side of it, you know, but then you think about the money that's being spent on this stuff, and then, you know, that adds that extra pressure and stress of, oh, I don't want to be the one to cause a $5,000 plane ride, you know, whatever it, you know, is.
You're
Obviously,
thinking in fuel prices from 20 years ago, Joey. I
right.
think a 200-way attempt is going to be around $14,000
Right.
of total lift tickets. And if you're the person that says, fuck, guys, I'm hypoxic, that's a lot of pressure, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot to ask of an individual to stand down in that scenario and not jeopardize the other people on the jump.
Right.
Cool. So that's a little bit about prep. Laura, do you agree with the prep stuff?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, honestly, you know, there's little things that you can do, but a big thing I think is just being aware too, because I think it's like anything else in our sport. Complacency is where that's where we lose a lot. You know, it's like with our EPs. You know, it's the same kind of thing. Don't discount how important it is when they tell you don't move around a lot. You know, keep your oxygen in as long as possible. Sometimes we just kind of like we're so amped to go that we're, you know, doing everything. We take it out because we're so ready to go and the lights not, you know, just come on or something to that effect. And it's really trying to be diligent about, no, this is an important thing. And, you know, it's got real potential to affect not just me, but everybody else.
Is there anywhere that, or any way that a person can safely experience hypoxia, and would that even be beneficial?
Well, like Steph and I are going for high altitude training for part of military certification for the work that we do. It can be done. Usually, I mean, I'm sure you could pay for. There's some clinic somewhere that'll do it for you if you pay them. But like the stuff that we're getting, you've got to have a reason. You've got to have.
I mean, there's no simple way to go experience to do it. I mean, like
if there is, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Would that be benefit? Do you think that's like Joey? Now that you've experienced it before, and I think you were saying even in the military you had some training and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Is that experience helpful for future occurrences or whatever?
I think it is helpful. Like, you know, for me personally, like, you know, like I mentioned the hand warmer thing. Like, it may be 70 degrees, 80 degrees out, and we're doing a big wave. If I'm by that door, I have hand warmers because I know the first signs I notice are my hands tingling, my lips get numb, and stuff like that. So I want to make sure, are my hands cold or are they tingling? You know, so for me, yes, it's definitely. And I think for everyone, you know, to maybe get those symptoms that your first signs that you recognize. But is it realistic? You know, to get 200 skydivers are about to do a big way to get to go to an altitude chamber? Probably not.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Joey in 2015 was probably in an incredibly small percentage of people who already had that training, and he still suffered the consequences. Like I mean, it might be helpful, but clearly there's at least one case where it really didn't make a difference. And I think that was the context that I was trying to add, and the backstory of like what was going on is, and now to add that, hey, this is a really expensive skydive. Hey, I'm letting a bunch of people down if I speak up here. And by the way, the first symptom is I feel great. You know, like it's just a tough concoction. I wanted to add to something that Joey said, that in the last record attempts, physical fitness was the thing that I wanted to touch on. I stay pretty fit. I have not been hypoxic. In the same record year that Joey had his incident, I sat up from the plane and popped my pin at 19,000 feet on our long jump run. and had to lay on the floor while I think 2 or maybe 3 people tried to close my rig. The first one got off oxygen, closed it wrong. I would have had a total malfunction. Another person opened it back up. When that person went back on oxygen, I think that second person closed it correctly. But myself, I was off oxygen for maybe 8 or 10 minutes while 2 different people tried to do it, and they were both oxygen, not on oxygen for the 5 minutes that they shared, 5 minutes each. And so in some ways I think, oh, well, I haven't been hypoxic and I stay pretty fit, so maybe that's good for me. However, for those of you we had Steve Lefkowitz on, I don't know, 4 weeks ago, maybe. Steve is kind of a nerd, but he is the most fit person that any of us know. He is doing like the insanity workout for 90 minutes in the morning, and then he's doing it again in the evening. And he got out on a regular altitude jump some years ago, 13,000, and he was hypoxic. And Steve is an exceptional flyer, could not stop turning on his belly. And he's a belly flyer. Just, I know this is wrong. I'm just going to, and he got down to like 8,000 feet before he finally was like, stop turning. I know how to fly. Okay, my team's here. Let's carry on with the skydive, but had no recollection of leaving the plane to the point where he stopped turning. And again, guys, he is supremely fit. Now, somebody like Steve Curtis, who on the last record attempts wasn't getting enough oxygen, he's a smoker. Maybe not the most fit guy, but he's not a hippo. He's a big dude. But he got hypoxic in the middle of whatever the head up or head down that we were doing, and corked out of the base. He's got 30,000 skydives. So I think that it's a fallacy for me to even spend time thinking that I'm immune potentially to the effects of this because I've gotten away with it so far. I think anybody can potentially be affected by what we're talking about.
Yeah, I have to ask, is it, you're saying that you've never been hypoxic, but from what they're saying, it seems to me that it is possible that you've been hypoxic and just didn't know it.
For sure possible. I just didn't have loss of memory. I had no giddy feelings. Like when I popped my pin, I freaking knew it just popped, and I was pretty like the same kind of pressure. Like, not only is this a big skydive, but I'm one of the organizers and I don't need to have my pin popped at 19,000 feet. But I didn't lose any memory. The skydive was fine for me. So I
see what you're saying.
But I think what mitigates it a little bit, to be honest, is that Steph and I live in Colorado. Our home is at 9,500 feet. And so every day for me when I'm home is pulling wood uphill at, a pretty decent altitude. And so I get acclimated, I think, more than most other people. And I don't know how long those effects last, but I just haven't felt it.
Yeah.
So can both of you guys talk about the symptoms? Like what can we see in other people that might alert us to the fact that somebody's struggling?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is exactly what Joey was saying earlier about they can be tricky, and that honestly, you might think somebody's just having a bad day. You might just think somebody's got the giggles. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that is super, super subtle that you really, it's going to be almost impossible for us to tell you should be picking up on this. But the super, super sleepy, the irrational behavior, the irrational anger that he was talking about, things like that, kind of is the stuff that you can start to look out for, especially in times where you would be more concerned about it. Those high altitude jumps, where you're kind of looking at somebody and you're not sure if their oxygen hose is actually there, and you notice this behavior. Those are kind of the subtle things that you can pick up on and just even ask them, like, hey, is your oxygen in? I just wanted to check on it. It looked kind of off, but it can be tough.
Yeah. Joey?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with all that. I mean, it's extremely hard. Like, even, unless you're going to sit there with your buddy and pull out a whiteboard and ask them what 2 + 2 is, but I mean, even just in general, like, maybe that kind of basic questions, if you have doubts on somebody, some basic questions like that may reveal something as far as those.
Do you guys think, so at least in the Skydive Chicago planes, we put an iPad in the back that tells jump run separation, but we don't need that on a big way, obviously. Is there, or would it be a reasonable idea to have a test that just, hey, you just press the button at 15,000 feet and it starts cycling through tests, and maybe every 2 minutes it starts another one, and it's just what Joey talked about. 2+2 is, and then the answer is given. And if people didn't get it, and I mean, this is basic math, right? Stuff that adults should understand. If that we put that in as part of the, hey, for the last 6 or 8 minutes that we're going to be flying to altitude, a test is just going to, I mean, it's got to be different ones because obviously you get the answer after a while, but a test is going to play. If you don't get 100% answers, that it doesn't require anything, at least hey, something is not right. And would that be efficacious on a big wave situation? Is that some way that there might be some mitigation?
The problem I see with that is that you're just not aware. Like, even if you see that 2+2 and you said in your head 6 pops up, but 4 comes up there, like
it doesn't bother you.
You may not have that awareness to be like, it's going to be more of like that, that's weird. Why did that say 4? It's definitely 6. Like, that's exactly what you're going to do.
See, that sounds like somebody who's high. That sounds like somebody who's high to me.
Yeah.
So, Craig Girard has a story actually that he likes to tell about being in an altitude chamber with a similar time where they were taking down the oxygen, and their task was just, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe it was just write your name. Just write your name over and over. And he says that he got into it and he was just writing. He's kind of looking around. He's writing. And all of a sudden he just starts to hear a voice that says, put your mask on. And he think he's saying to everybody else, because why? He's doing perfect. He's writing his name, no problem. And finally looks up and notices everybody else has their mask on. And so finally, they get his mask on, and he says he looked down and it was just gibberish that he'd been writing, like absolutely not his name. But while he was in the moment, he thought that he was writing perfectly. And that's unfortunately
I'm telling you, that's somebody high as a kite right there.
And there's a YouTube video of a guy in the altitude chamber. And if I remember right, the card is 6 of spades. And he's going through a card deck and he's looking at it and he's supposed to read you what is on that card. He got to a point that he kept reading 6 of spades, and just kept showing it. And then we pull the next card, 6 of spades, and just kept going card after card after card saying 6 of spades. You're just not even aware that it's wrong.
Yeah. Wow.
So I mean, like,
I'll keep chewing on that.
The only point, if you suspect a buddy is messed up a little bit, is asked, that's when you can maybe question them, simple questions that they should be able to get, and if they're not getting them, then maybe that's, a sign of how you can help your buddy out.
You talking about the 2+2, or you mean like what day is it? What year is it? Who's the president? That kind of stuff.
Random, random question that, anybody in their right mind should be able to answer, that kind of thing.
I mean, it almost makes me think like on the big way, how high altitude jumps. It's almost like maybe there should be a person who's not jumping, who's not a part of the record, that's on their own personal oxygen, that's not connected to the plane, and their job is make sure everybody's okay. And if they're not, nobody's getting out. Almost like you have to have something like that, a fail-safe, that somebody who can pay attention, and they have no pressure to jump. They have no pressure to, their pressure is make sure everybody is safe and nobody dies, because that's a lot of pressure to, I mean, I didn't even think about that, JRuss, too. You said that, like, if I'm going on one of these jumps and I know that if I pull off, I screw up the record, like, dude, that's a lot of pressure for something that I'm not sure about, like, oh no, I'm sure I'll be fine. It'll be okay. Like, nah, it's okay. It's fine.
At the Max Pyro, something I did recently, some kind of big wave event, a very, very talented skydiver turned to me as we were at, I don't know, maybe 7. It was like, hey, I don't feel very good. I'm not going on this jump. And by the time I turned to the pilot, happened to be, I think Sean Hill was flying the plane. I turned to him and said, hey, somebody's riding down with you. So just be aware that there's one jumper not jumping. And I turned back and he had passed out on my shoulder. And it wasn't until we got down to about 2,500 feet that he regained consciousness. I mean, it's a tough one. But a safety officer would be an interesting idea. Um, except in my mind, like they would have to have like their own bailout bottle or scuba equipment or something, because their flow rate has to be guaranteed and has to be high.
Yeah.
And because they're going to have to move around and look at and talk to people, right?
Yep.
And make those assessments. And so that in itself is something that we discourage. I mean, from everybody. Don't no extra movements, no nothing that's going to use oxygen.
Yeah.
So it'd be an interesting idea, as well as trying to get the whoever's hey, Rook, we're not going to put 20 people in the plane. We're going to put 19. And you have to pay for the safety officer to ride along. Like registration's already pretty high.
Yeah.
We'll have to work on that one.
Well, Laura, is there anything that you think hasn't been brought up or hasn't been discussed or said that you really want to make sure that everybody hears?
No, I mean, you guys really hit all the high points. I kind of had a list of stuff that I was like, I just want to make sure this gets out, but truthfully, you guys hit it. So no, it's been an awesome discussion. I really appreciate you guys bringing this topic up into light, because it's important that more people hear about it and are aware of it, because it's very real in our community.
Are you continuing to try to, I mean, is your goal to do more data collection and research? Is that something that you're hoping to try to do more of?
Definitely. Yeah. So I'd like to definitely expand it out to the different ages, the different demographics, different kind of people. I'd like to continue taking it up to the high altitude and test out different oxygen delivery strategies, because everybody has a different way, whether it's in your nose, your mouth, in your helmet, blow by, and just kind of seeing where those fall short. Is there a benefit or risk to some, and just really trying to use it to help our knowledge.
Laura, do you think that there's any like I was kind of thinking when we were talking about the devices, the Whoop, and you named the ring. What's it called?
The Aura Ring?
Aura.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's possibility of contacting one of those companies and saying, hey, we're doing this event. There's going to be 400 people or 200 people or however many there are. And certainly not everyone would probably want to wear the device, but we've got a medical researcher who's part of this process and would like to data collect for her. I don't know what whatever your thesis or whatever it is that you're doing, or just regular work, and get them to sponsor some people to be your guinea pigs.
That would be fantastic. So
I wonder,
yeah.
I mean, what a publicity thing for them to be able to go back and say, 200 skydivers tried to do a world record thing, and we had 100 of them and monitored their oxygen and sleeping and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Maybe a good partnership there.
That would be great. I'll look into that, because that would be really fantastic, really, for everybody all around.
Yeah. Yeah. And Laura, if you have, I mean, the skydiving community is so cool to me, because I would bet money that there's people that are going to listen to this and they'll be like, dude, I'd be happy to wear one of those things. And I think there's people that would go out and get one themselves just because they want to be safer, and they would be happy to share the data with you. That's just skydivers, man. Like, that's what we do. I think it's so cool. So if you have like recommended devices or things that you have seen to be most reliable, and the data collection is actually good, like somehow let us help you, share that information with people, with the community, and say, look, if you're willing to go get one of these things, number one, it's going to help keep you safe if you're a person who does high altitude jumps or part of big waves or whatever. And then number two, here's how you can share that data with Laura so that you can help the research progress. I think that would be super cool. And I think there's skydivers that would do that. I would do it.
Yeah.
I would do it.
Yeah, if there is anybody interested, I mean, I would, for the research and like the cost of the device and everything, I mean, I would be willing to easily help to chip in for part of the cost and to be able to get some of the data back. But there is the best device that you can get is something, it's called WellU. Truthfully, it's the one, after looking into a bunch of different ways. A lot of the just wrist monitors, just rings, like there's a lot of error in a lot of those, but WellU is like WELLUE. But they sell this device that basically it's a combination of, it's a little wrist mount, and it just has this little rubber cord that goes up to a ring, and you can just put it under a glove and it sits there. And that it'll have different options, but you can have it vibrate if your oxygen goes down below a certain amount. And so it'll immediately warn you, like, hey, your oxygen is now down in the 70s. Be aware of it, which is great for you. The graphs on the phone that I showed you earlier, those come from that device in particular. So they put great graphs in there. But yeah, I found it to be a phenomenal device. I've gotten probably around 6 or 7 of them by now, and I'll bring them to events and just pass them out.
Well, I mean, right there's a solution to that safety officer thing, JRuss. What if you like talk to those well you people and you're like, hey, we need all these people to be able to wear one of these devices, but when the alarm goes off, we need it to notify one device. So the safety officer has their phone, and they've created an ad hoc wireless network on the plane, and all those devices are connected to either that ad hoc network or Bluetooth. And as soon as one of them goes off, bam, it notifies his phone, and he can see who it is because it's got their name. And he's like, hey, Joey, hey man, are you okay? And he goes and talks to Joey or whatever,
Yeah.
Like
I'm looking at WellU's website right now, and I think, I mean, this looks great. The instant feeling that I have is that people might be, I mean, it would be great for an event. I think that like if I was going to get something that kept metrics about the performance of my body, I think because this one seems really focused on oxygen, that I might want like sleep patterns and stuff like that, where some of the other, I think some of the other brands have a little more focus on, but that would be super interesting for a big way event for sure, to try and partner with anybody, really anybody who wanted to partner with us, but somebody who could not only drive data, but make the overall event safer for everybody would be great. So that might be something I'll continue to chew on.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Joey, you got anything to add before we go?
No, I don't think
How'd
so.
we do?
There's a lot, but it's been 10 years, so I didn't have to relive it. Like I said, I don't remember what I remember anyway, so.
Yeah. All right.
Well, man, it's been a great conversation, and you've if you're listening to the podcast, you've done it again. You've wasted another perfectly good hour listening to the Crave Show with JRuss, Chris, and Joey and Laura. Thank you guys, both of you, Laura, Joey. Thank y'all so much for joining us. Obviously, we hope this is not a waste for everybody. That it's very beneficial for people, and educational and helpful. Keeps the community safer. Allows us to keep jumping and having a lot of fun. So thank y'all both for being with us tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for letting me relive that again, JRuss.
That's what I've been waiting for.
All right.
Cool.
Well, get out there. I mean, like we say, man, go jump out of an airplane with your friends, have fun, enjoy skydiving. I mean, that's why we do it. It's so fun, man. It's so enjoyable. Isn't it? Isn't skydiving great, you guys? It's so awesome. I love it. Well, go have fun, jump out of an airplane, enjoy the sky, and Crave, do more, be better. Thank you guys. Y'all have a great week. See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. See you guys.